Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. This is The Writing Life. And, you know, I was thinking as we solicit guests and so on, sometimes the timing doesn't work out. And this was the case with our guest today, Collete, Tennant. And I'm kind of glad it didn't, because now we just get to focus on you. You've done so much more than we were originally going to cover. So first, welcome.
Thank you.
And I won't do this the whole interview, but
Okay.
let me call you doctor, because you are a doctor.
Oh, feel free to call me Collete.
All right.
Please.
This classes us up a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah. But so originally we were talking about Never Solitary Stages. And can you kind of explain that project and your part in that?
Sure. So Diane Forsberg had always wanted to be a writer, but she was in real estate and other things. And actually, I didn't know this for a while, but she actually felt kind of silenced by people,
Really?
starting with her brothers when she was little. So then she found her voice and decided to be a writer and started putting she planned on putting 3 books together.
Right.
And my friend Eleanor Berry was the poet with her and Joel in her first book. And then she asked me to be the poet in the second book of prayers and images and poems.
Which are lovely.
So, thank you.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to have her on earlier, and the whole makeup, the text and the images and so on are just gorgeous.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it when art begets art,
Sure.
and that's kind of what this project.
Yeah.
There's something when all 3 things come together, the prayers and the poetry and the images, that it becomes even more than those 3 things.
They enhance each other. This would have been a great segue, except I want to save it, and that is that you did Above the Stars, the fusion art.
Right.
So we'll get there.
Okay.
But in
All
the
right.
meantime, can you read us something from
Sure, I'd
Never
love
Solitary?
to. Definitely. Yeah, Diane and I got together, and she had the prayers first, and then she looked in my poetry books and some poems I'd written, and we matched up what went together.
Oh, so let me stop you there. Did you then, these were poems that were published somewhere else first?
Right.
Okay, I thought that maybe you had written them for this.
Yeah, she found those in my books of poetry.
Okay.
Or we kind of met, and then I made a list of ones for her to look at.
Okay.
So here she talks about time to see what something new is. I've made goals for myself just for me to be better, and now it seems as if I can't get out of a favorite old coat. So we matched that old coat idea up with a poem I wrote called First Grade Coat.
Okay.
So I'll read this. Black with white fur collars and cuffs, it had 4 silver buttons, puffy as full moons. I don't know where I left it, on the bus or on the playground where we took turns at hopscotch, fingering rocks in our satin pockets. I don't know if another girl liked it and took it home, or if foxes managed to pull my pretty black coat into the woods to line their den. I just know the next day, with heavy Midwest snow frosting my window, I had another coat. I remember it didn't have full moon buttons or white fur, but it kept me warm all the way to school. Most of what I've learned in life has been like that.
I hadn't read that. And I was actually, as you were reading, I was waiting for you to get to the end or for me to discover where this was going. And now I think I know. I don't want to spoil it. I think maybe poetry, more than anything, should be left to the recipient to discover. But is there anything that you'd like to say about that? Well, number one, did that actually happen?
That did happen.
I suspect so.
That did happen.
Right.
I lost quite a few things when I was little.
Okay.
But what you said about discovery, I mean, to me, anytime I write a poem, it's the act of discovery.
Okay.
And if
You're discovering.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm so surprised. Like sometimes I'll start writing a poem and then I'll remember a memory I didn't know I remembered.
Right.
Till I started into the poem.
Right.
because I hadn't thought about this memory for years till I wrote that poem.
Uh-huh.
And I know one thing that writing experts warn is if you already know where your poem's going, don't write that poem.
Really? Okay.
Because you want to be surprised too as
Sure.
a writer.
Well, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
I know in prose, I've heard two approaches. One is absolutely no, and then Stephen King is an example of the other approach, and he just likes to find out.
Yeah.
He said, this seems interesting, let's see where it goes.
Right. It's
Yeah.
wonderful when the writer's surprised too
Yeah.
by what they write.
Completely off topic, where in the Midwest?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. Davenport, Iowa here.
Aha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when people talk about tough winters out here, we just kind of don't say anything, right?
When we first moved from Iowa to the West Coast, my brother and I didn't know that they had winter for years. We just wore shorts all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The same thing about humidity in the summer.
Well, that's true.
If people say it's humid, I was just like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, right. You know, I did a little research. I wanted to look up some things about you. They're all interesting, but I got to hear about stinky bagels.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
what in the world?
Yeah. So I teach at Corbin University in Salem, and Stinky Bagels is a poetry club I started when I
Okay.
started teaching there 24 years ago.
Okay.
And it's the longest running club at the university.
Ah,
And well, we got dubbed that. We didn't give ourselves that name.
I wondered where it came from.
Yeah. People called us that because when we first started meeting, we met about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and people were kind of snacky hungry. So I would pick up bagels on the way into school and some cream cheese, and I'd put those out. And one of the bagels I picked up was the everything bagel
Okay.
with garlic.
Oh, okay.
And so people just started calling us Stinky Bagels, and it stuck. And I thought, well, maybe after about 10 years, I thought maybe that's not sophisticated enough. Maybe I should call it something more sophisticated. And then we did for a couple years, and everybody was like, no, we miss Stinky Bagels, bring
Right.
it back. So
Yeah.
we're
Well,
back to Stinky Bagels.
I read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point, and one of the characteristics is stickiness, and that's what stays with us. And I think Stinky
Yeah.
Bagels probably qualifies.
Right, because it's so quirky.
You started the poetry. Oh, I see. Okay, you started the poetry club, Stinky Bagels. I thought those were two different things.
Yeah.
And now the Literary Arts Council, that's a separate?
That's basically it's a fundraiser kind of thing. So for people who want to donate to the college,
Okay.
particularly to creative writing efforts.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what that is.
Now, fusion art is yet another thing?
And Fusion Art Show is part of the literary arts and the creative
Okay.
writing. Can I say something about the Literary
Of
Arts
course,
Fund?
sure.
Since you're connected to Habitat too.
Sure.
So when we started the Literary Arts Fund, I made a little pamphlet, and I was asking people if they would want to give $5 a month or $10 a month or
Right.
whatever. And I had this. I was working on it, and my daughter was there, and she's a fundraiser. At the time, she was a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity.
Oh, okay.
So she saw the pamphlet. She said, well, Mom, you've got to give the big ask.
Oh,
I said, well, what do you mean the big ask? She said, well, ask for a vacation home for writers' retreats, ask for over $1 million to fund a chair in writing.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I put that on there. Don't you know?
really?
We got the first endowed chair at Corbin University. We have Gina Oshner, a wonderful writer there, because somebody did give us over $1 million to endow that chair.
Isn't that something?
Yep.
Do you remember Lee Iacocca, the name?
Yeah.
And I remember reading his book, Iacocca, which I thought was fascinating, and that at the very end, I think it probably was the last page, he said something like, I wouldn't be much of a salesman if I didn't ask for the order. And so he asked
Yeah.
for something.
Right.
But you got to ask.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a good lesson for me.
Yeah. Now, you taught in Germany as well. Tell us about that.
So twice I went over to Regensburg, Germany, and we had an overseas program. That man has since retired, so we don't have that right now. But and he asked me for years I've taught humanities courses too at Corbin, so
Okay.
I've taught the history of art for years along with literature. So he said, would you like to come over and teach art history for
Yeah.
2 weeks? And I was like, well, sure. And he said, well, I hope you don't mind if we'll start in Salzburg and do the Sound of Music tour and look
Right.
at the art there. Then we'll go down to Venice and Florence
Now, did you have students travel with you? Okay, I didn't know that.
and
All
to
right.
Padua and then to the Italian Riviera just for fun. He said, would that be okay? I was like, sure.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Right.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah, so it was a great opportunity to travel with the students and to see that great. It's so different when you teach art, when you can look at the piece, because the colors, no matter how good the reproduction is,
Okay.
the colors and the size, it's always more, just it sticks with them more in person.
Sure.
I've also gotten the opportunity for 3 times to lead a student trip to Great Britain
Okay.
and Scotland.
Yeah.
And I take them around the galleries there. And
Yeah. You know, and this is my ignorance, I don't think about great art there like I do on the continent. And I'm just wrong.
right, right. Now, yeah, the National Gallery of England has a ton of
Okay.
wonderful pieces. One of my favorite paintings was just Titian's Ariadne and Bacchus. I love teaching that one. But
Yeah.
even the gallery in Scotland has a lot of surprising pieces.
And is it, is there a genre that would be representative? In other words, when I think of Europe or Italy maybe particularly, I kind of have an image, but I don't really have an image of England and Scotland.
Well,
what would we be looking at?
Well, the gallery, the National Gallery has from Renaissance, famous, you'd see Rembrandt, you'd see
Okay, so not
Leonardo,
necessarily
Titian.
produced there.
Right, no,
Okay,
it's from
right.
all over the world.
I got
Just
you.
like the British Museum.
Sure.
I
Okay.
went through the British Museum the first time and I asked her, I said, I can't believe you have so many Greek vases. I didn't even know these many
Right.
Greek vases still even existed. And she said, oh, honey, we just went around the world stealing things from all sorts of people. Maybe we shouldn't say steal, but you know, that's what the docent at the British Museum
Appropriate,
said.
maybe.
Right, appropriated,
Yeah.
appropriated. But I'm sure that the gallery was all up and up. But you know, they have collected works from all over the world.
I'm going to digress a little, just because this was a fun story for me. When I was in college, 2 friends and I spent the summer in Europe. And it was a
Nice.
different time.
Yeah.
I don't think you could do this now. We bought an old Volkswagen van and drove all over. And well, we wound up at one point in Florence and, of course, had to see the David.
Right,
And
right.
there were some young girls in front of us, college-aged girls, and we were standing right behind them. And the girl in front of me, looking at the David, started at the floor and up and up and up and looked all the way up. And she got to his face and she said, they don't make them like that anymore.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
you talked about critiquing or criticism, and you have a book of criticism.
Right,
Okay.
that I just finished writing.
Tell me, yeah, okay, so that's the new one.
But I do have an older one too.
I thought so, yeah.
yeah,
So talk about
So
that.
I wrote a book of literary criticism on Margaret Atwood and her first 7 novels, and it's called Reading the Gothic in Margaret Atwood's
Right.
first 7 novels.
Okay,
So I focused on the Gothic literature. I did my doctoral dissertation on the first 4 novels,
okay.
and then she wrote 3 more while I was working on that. It took me a while.
Yeah, tell her to slow down.
Took me a while. Right, exactly. I learned the lesson: when you write your doctoral dissertation, don't pick somebody who's still writing.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, so I got that I added to it, you know, a couple years later, and then got that published as a book.
Well, again, I'm going to digress a little bit, and this is kind of for me. Gothic, what's the definition of Gothic?
Well, it can be complicated and kind of
Yeah.
long, but just there are certain elements of the Gothic. One is there's some kind of secret.
Okay,
some kind of transformation. People aren't who they think. People aren't who characters think they are sometimes. The relationships are mixed up. There's just some kind of general mystery involved usually. There's usually some kind of a Gothic setting, an old abbey or a house that's run down.
Yeah.
So like the novel Wuthering Heights, that literally means like weathered house.
Okay.
So, yeah, those are some of the elements.
Some of those words, you know, when we hear them, we think we know what they mean, but then when you really get into it, I'm not sure that all of us do.
Right. Sometimes they have a Byronic hero.
I'm sorry, say
a
that again?
Byronic hero.
Byronic? I don't know what
which
that is.
is named after Lord Byron,
Byron,
who kind of lived out a life of a Byronic hero himself. He was, people said of Lord Byron, he was mad, bad, and dangerous to know.
Really?
Yeah. And so there's that kind of a character.
Okay.
Oftentimes in a Gothic novel. And there's usually, then another thing that happens a lot of times is that women are victims of these anti-heroes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the Byronic.
Right, of the
Okay.
Byronic hero.
Yeah. So what about the new book? I know we're going to have you back when that comes out, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I was so pleased this summer. I was actually at a writers' conference in Port Townsend, and I got an email from an editor, from an acquisitions editor. Would you like to write a book on Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale?
Holy cow.
So I didn't know if it was a joke or something. You know,
Right.
I looked up the publisher, and it was a good publisher. So I said, sure, I am interested. I said, am I trying out for this with a lot of people? She said, no, just you. So
Right.
no, I still had to formulate a table of contents and
Right.
summaries and everything. And then, yeah, so.
Now, did she find you because of your dissertation?
Well, she didn't give me all the details, but I said, how did you come to find me? She said, I snooped you out on the internet.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole, but is your work available on the internet? Do you,
I have
by
various
your work?
poems.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can Google me and find things I've written, I guess maybe is what she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would think maybe then she started with a topic and knew that she wanted to do Margaret Atwood, which you've
Right.
put considerable work into.
Right. And with the title of the book, you can see that she was looking for somebody who had written about Margaret Atwood and also knew the Bible, which might have been how
had
she
those both.
landed on me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the title of that book is, and they may have shown it here, but is it Religion in the Handmaid's
Religion
Tale?
in the Handmaid's Tale,
Yeah.
a brief guide.
Okay. And this is a little bit tough. I think different people see different things in the same work.
Right.
And on the other hand, not everybody's opinion has the same weight
Right.
because they don't have the same expertise. You do. And Corbin is, if I characterize this properly, a Christian school.
It is. It is.
Yeah. And so is there a sort of an atmosphere? Does this infuse campus life? And yeah.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a Christian university, so one of the things we do is integrate the Bible into our classes.
Okay. So really this is no stretch for you.
No, it wasn't a stretch for me. Yeah. And, you know, the thing about this book that we'll talk about later, but I'll just say, Margaret Atwood saturated this book with biblical references.
Okay.
And
And this is all intentional.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
And she
you're
talks
not
about
bringing
that.
this to
right.
it.
No.
Right.
Because in the new Hulu edition of the book, in the introduction to that, the newer introduction to that, she talks about how she definitely dipped into, you know, Judeo-Christian beliefs
Okay.
to, you know, and I won't go into it too much, but so it really helps to know the Bible and religious threads in the book. It really helps to understand the book. Like if you don't get those, you miss a lot.
Sure.
Just like if you read Moby Dick and you don't get that first famous line, "Call me Ishmael," you know, you just miss a lot with Moby Dick too. It's very similar, and that is so saturated with Bible imagery.
Okay. I know a little bit about Handmaid's Tale, not really a lot, but it struck me that this is dystopian the right
Absolutely.
word?
Yeah.
And so does that reflect her disdain for the religion, or?
No, in fact, she addressed that in this new edition.
Okay.
She said, one of the most frequent questions I'm asked about The Handmaid's Tale is, am I criticizing religion? And
Well,
she
that's
said,
what I would have thought.
right, and that's what, and honestly, years ago, that's what I thought the first time I read that book.
Okay.
But this time through, it dawned on me, and how she answers it in the intro, she said, I'm not criticizing religion per se, but what she is criticizing is the misuse of religion to manipulate people in a terrible way, which we've all witnessed and seen.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's what she's criticizing.
I have had this conversation and argument with people that more evil has been done in the name of religion than anything else, and I'm not sure that I can combat that, except that that's not the whole story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's definitely not her whole story in that novel.
Okay. I don't want to run out of time
Okay.
before you get to read some more.
Okay. All right.
I'll let you pick.
All right. Well, I don't know if we're going to talk about that today or maybe not, but that's
Yeah.
okay. But this is, I mean, you know, I could even read one of my students' pieces out
Yeah,
of here,
sure.
but it's similar to A Never Solitary in that every year I put out a book of student work, and it's all student work. And we have a big gallery show, and we start with the student poems, and then I put out a call, which student wants to paint this poem, and which student wants to interpret it as a photograph.
Okay.
And then we create this book, and every page has the poem and the photograph and the painting.
You know, we have a local
So-
event at the gallery at Ten Oaks. Are familiar with that? And there is a word for, I think, matching a poem to a painting.
Oh, I heard about this.
Yeah.
Is that this month?
You know, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But in this case, the painting comes first, and people come look at the paintings and then write a poem to match it. This is the reverse.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we did a reading. Diane and Joel and I did a reading over there, and I was talking to them about what they do and how it's like this.
The
Only in
gallery at
reverse.
Ten Oaks. Okay.
Yeah. Only it's this in reverse. So there's that.
Okay.
I could read a poem from my most recent poetry book if you want me to.
We've
even
got time. Let's
after.
do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll start with one of the student poems.
Okay. And let me just ask, Above the Stars, is that,
Uh-huh.
I mean, if I had to guess, Above the Stars would be heaven? Or is
Yes,
that, is
it
that what that
Very
means?
good.
Okay.
In this sense, it does. And every year we vote, since it's literally student everything.
Right.
Every year I glean a few lines from poems, and then the students vote on which title they want.
Oh, I thought
So
maybe
every
it
year
stayed
has
the
a
same.
different. No,
Okay.
every year. So this year's is Above the Stars.
Okay.
So I'll read the poem
Yeah,
that line came from,
perfect.
and you'll see how it is referencing heaven. Moonlight after Lee Young Lee. I buried my mom above the stars. She's the life of the party up there. Since then, she eats her pasta with ranch every day. I buried my mom in my mind. Every day I think of her. I think of that time she taught me how to tie my shoes, the time we sat on the couch and watched Lifetime, or the car rides when she played Mary J. Blige Breakthrough album over and over again. And even the way she told me she was proud of me with her last few breaths. I buried my mom in my writing. I find her again in my poetry, a tribute, a way to still talk to her, more words than what was in her obituary.
That's
Isn't that
powerful.
beautiful? Isn't that
Yeah.
beautiful? And that was the prize-winning poem.
That would
of the
actually be
event.
hard for me to read if I had that association. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
You
it's
know what
beautiful.
I think is terrific about
And
that,
you can
among
see
other
that.
things? Oh, yeah.
Wonderful painting and photograph for it.
Okay. I think so often when we say to bury something is to push it away, to isolate it. But when she buries it in her poetry, it's the opposite.
Right.
You're encasing it, you're holding it together.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. That's
And there's some joy in
that's a
that
good
too.
read. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
has her pasta with ranch.
Yeah. Right. 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 No, there's humor in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Well,
a wonderful
good.
poem because it doesn't just do one or the other. It's complex.
Sure. Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, give us another.
All right. Let me think of what I want to do here.
And you have several books.
I do have, I have 2 poetry books, Eden and
Okay.
After and Commotion of
Okay.
Wings. And this is the most recent one. I'll read the title poem, Eden
Yeah.
and After.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll have to tell you about the title.
Please.
This is a running joke with my students, because my students say that I can find Eden in any story that I teach, which I can.
Uh-huh.
Because it's not my fault, it's just in there. You know, but anyway.
And
so,
Eden being the Garden of Eden.
right.
Okay.
Garden of Eden images and so many things.
Okay.
So many things. Because I think the reason you can find it is I think the earth is yearning for some kind of redemption ever since Eden, ever since the exile from Eden.
Okay.
So, okay. So here's Eden and After. And it has a little epigraph by Robert Bly that says, "Every way of knowing is blessed by bootleggers."
I read that when I was, and I just don't get it. Maybe you could tell me
What,
about
every
that.
way
too.
of knowing is blessed by bootleggers?
Yeah.
Well, let me see if the poem explains it a little
Okay,
bit.
sure.
Okay. Bootleggers know some of the best things in life can't be bought in the open. They know our thirsts are vagrant, our hungers liars and cutthroats. We do anything. In the back country, bootleggers get caught every autumn, their stills exposed when the leaves drop off the trees. A yearly rehearsal for our lives, living in the fall, our sour mash exposed to the light.
Okay, I think I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's nice.
Yeah. So just this whole idea that, you know, well, the heart of it's probably that they know our thirsts are vagrant, our hungers, liars, and cutthroats.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
A
So-
little bit about maybe not everything's on the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
We've got time for one more.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Here's kind of a funny one.
Okay.
And one of the ways we can find ideas for poems is just look up quirky statistics or facts.
Really?
Facts. So this is based on a quirky fact I found out. Sweetest 106. I have 106 fewer bones than when I was a baby. I miss them now, and I want to know how they all got out and where they went without me. Dear 106, come home again. Soften these recalcitrant bones of mine. Teach them how to love something so much they just disappear.
I ask this probably every time of a poet, and I'm going to ask you too.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about poetry that is, in a sense, more powerful than prose?
It's so compact,
Okay.
for one thing. And it goes beyond the storyline
Okay.
to someplace more mysterious.
It sometimes, and this would be for me, I think about when you want somebody to really pay attention, don't speak loudly, whisper.
Right.
And then they have to come to it. And I think sometimes in poetry you have to do that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yep. It's encoded a little bit more than prose is, in a way.
Yeah. But I know you love language, and I sure do.
Yeah.
I love how, well, here's another analogy. Sometimes when you're looking at something, let's say a distant star, if you look right at it, you really can't see it. You have to look to the side a little bit.
Interesting.
And I think maybe that's,
That's a wonderful analogy.
yeah, when you're a little bit off, and then when you work at it, you have to work at it a little bit.
And some stories, you read them once and you don't really want to read them,
Right.
maybe 5 times.
Right.
But an excellent poem, you can go back and back,
Yeah, you bet.
and there's still takeaway value.
Okay. Well, Collete, Tennant, thank you so much,
You're
and I really look forward to when are you going to come back?
September
In
is when the
September.
book comes out.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a delight. Thank you. Well, thanks, folks. That's it for today, but gosh, I hope you enjoyed that. I sure did. I'd love for you to write to me at stephenwlong.com. And Collete, do you have a website? If somebody wanted to.
I have one that I think might pop up on there.
Okay.
It's on, you could look up Collete Tennant Poets and Writers.
There you go. Okay. We'll do that, folks. And we'll just see you next time on The Writing Life. Thanks so much. And thank you again.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys want to do one just with yourself
as
without
long
me
as
doing
they
the
think we're
bongos?
done, if
No,
they got
no,
enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably? Okay, sounds good.
Let's go to lunch. I'm
Oh.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use a bite too.